This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Stick around to the end to see how you can save 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain. For those of you who've been around the channel for a while, you might remember a series I did back in the day called Who is Greater, where I would take two NBA legends and compare them to each other to see who was actually the better player between these two. And very often I would actually come out with a different opinion than I originally had going into it through the deeper evaluation. And I decided I wanted to do something kind of similar to that, but also different in many ways, and do a Steph versus Kevin Durant, who is better. And that is a very key word there, because I'm not talking about resumes today. I'm just talking about pure basketball ability, baby. With Curry having won his fourth ring and that being followed by all hell breaking loose in Brooklyn, there has been a lot of discourse surrounding the breaking up of the greatest team of all time. Yes, I said what I said. And a lot of that is about Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry specifically as the two superstars of the team. And while there's many angles to this conversation, I feel as though ultimately we're just leading to a battle of who is better between these two. Like, if you're in the camp of Steph needed Kevin Durant, or he went and cried to Kevin Durant to beat LeBron James or whatever, you probably think Kevin Durant's better. And if you think that Steph saved Kevin Durant's legacy by having him join the Warriors, then you probably think Steph's the better basketball player. So ultimately, let's just reach this conversation as it is and talk about which one of these players is actually fucking better at basketball. And for the fun of it, I'm going to do both the prime and current years in this comparison. Let's get into it. Now, for the sake of time, let's not bullshit each other. We are talking about offense here. Yes, I understand there are some things to talk about between these two defensively and rebounding wise, but really, if we're being completely honest, neither of us are picking one of these two players based on defense and fucking rebounding. It's a part of the game, it's an important part of the game, but not really for these guys. We're talking about offense here, and I'm not just saying that because Kevin Durant has an edge in those areas, because really, if we're looking at just simply positional stuff, I'd argue Steph is a more impressive point guard rebounder than Kevin Durant is a forward rebounder, and that Kevin Durant at his peak was better defensively, but overall, I don't think the difference is that significant, even though I'd give it to Kevin Durant. Point being, we're not talking about that shit. It's not what's really relevant with these guys. These are insanely talented offensive players, so we're going to talk about their offense. All right? Let's not bullshit each other. Starting with Durant on the offensive side of the ball, there is a very small club of players who you could reasonably take over Durant to get you a bucket under any circumstances. There are only a handful of players you could argue are better scorers. In fact, to me personally, I only have one player over him as a scorer, and that is Michael Jordan, who I believe to be the best scorer of all time. Yes, even though he didn't have a three-point shot, and this is the argument of versatility that I'm going to tackle a little bit later, but it's something that really bothers me, and specifically Kevin Durant is often an example of it. But either way, Kevin Durant can fucking score better than all but maybe like 3 people ever. So he's kind of a force scoring the ball, and that is important. And I want to emphasize that, yeah, being able to score the shit out of the ball is really important. And that's something that has always bothered me, especially in the past couple of years, being someone who has been a big supporter of Zach LaVine. Would you point out that a guy is an absolute goddamn bucket and some fucking nerd leans over to you and says, well, what can they do besides for score? I'm not about that energy, man. Scoring is the most important thing in basketball. And if you can do it at an elite level, that's fucking impressive. Do not just blow by 25 points per game on above league average efficiency because sometimes a guy has decision-making and defensive problems. Fuck you. I digress. Though in a similar type of vein, and this is something I was suggesting earlier, scoring versatility is also something that can be overrated at times, and especially with Kevin Durant. There are people who would scoff at the notion that someone like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar compares to Kevin Durant as a scorer, even though he's the all-time leading scorer, and that's just because of his nearly 40,000 points, only 3 of them came from a three-pointer, so that means he wasn't a great scorer. Kevin Durant often gets acclaimed for his scoring ability because he can literally do it all, and he deserves that acclaim and that does matter, but sometimes something that's simpler that produces the same amount of points on the same amount of efficiency isn't as significantly worse as people treat it like it is. Like an example I bring up with Kevin Durant specifically is that 2021 second round series versus Giannis. People act like Kevin Durant was way outscoring Giannis when in reality he averaged a few more points on about the same efficiency. Giannis was just scoring in a less pretty and versatile fashion. But also having versatility scoring wise can be important in really big moments because it allows you to make shots in any context. So it's definitely not nothing. Either way, Kevin Durant, unbelievable isolation score. Also pretty good within a system and off ball when he actually does it, but he very often resists that, especially in recent years. It's kind of frustrating that he shows a reluctance for this role when he is so damn good at it. And one more small area where I'll be a little overly critical of Kevin Durant's offensive game because let's face it, we're only nitpicking here. And this is not even a bad part of his game, it's just simply not what his reputation would suggest it is. I've said a couple of times before, but Kevin Durant is not a great three-point shooter. And I mean like great, like actually great. He's a good three-point shooter, but he's not genuinely elite from outside. And yet I see him mentioned as an all-time great three-point shooter like all the time, like more often than I see people say that for the likes of Paul George, who has 6 seasons better than Kevin Durant from outside in his career. And comparing him to, well, the fucking greatest three-point shooter of all time, Curry's worst prime season as a three-point shooter is still miles ahead of Kevin Durant's best. I've always felt like Kevin Durant should take more threes and he should be more efficient with them, but at the end of the day, maybe the guy's just not as great of a shooter from outside as a lot of people just give him the reputation for being. I realize it's impressive because he's 7 feet tall, but the guy takes 5 threes a game when he takes 20 shots. That is not a high three-point attempt rate for a modern wing whatsoever. And then when it comes to playmaking, which is the other side of the coin here, I actually think that Kevin Durant is underrated in this respect, even though I've pointed to this as the critical difference between Steph and KD. Like, the guy is actually not a terrible playmaker. He's not by any means, and I feel like the reputation has gone in that direction of him just not being great, simply because he's not, like, elite at it. But Kevin Durant's pretty good as a passer, and he does a decent job of capitalizing on his own gravity. Granted, not like somebody else we know. Now, flipping to Curry scoring wise, Curry is not as likely to burn the defense on every single ISO. However, where he becomes just as terrifying as an offensive threat is with his off-ball movement. Curry might not have the on-ball repertoire that Kevin Durant does, but his off-ball game, which is the best there has ever been, puts him closer to Durant as a scorer than you might think. And again, looking at just pure point production and efficiency here, peak for peak, Durant averages 1.2 more points on 2% worse true shooting. So again, I kind of beckon my point about versatility, like, yeah, Durant can score in a more versatile series of ways, but like all of that for 1 more point on worse efficiency. But try as I may, there is no denying that Kevin Durant is a better scorer than Stephen Curry. However, I just don't think the difference is as significant as the Stephen A. Smith, he can pull up for 30 bullshit that he does all the time. Where the larger gap exists is in the playmaking, where I'll skip the spiel about gravity because I've done it a million times and people get tired of it, and I feel like Durant, while not on Curry's level, is one of the more gravitational force players himself. Curry is just a better passer, and something in line with playmaking that I consider a part of it is that he is happy to exist within a system, one built to maximize his strength and allow his teammates to be successful. In a system where everybody eats and you consistently disrupt this system because you want your isolation possessions, is that not being a bad playmaker? Because it definitely feels like it. Ultimately, though this is definitely looking at it about as simplistically as you possibly can, Kevin Durant gets the edge as a scorer, Steph gets the edge of a playmaker, a little bit more significantly than the scoring thing, And again, the defense and rebounding thing, I don't think that's what we're here for. So there's that. Where Curry differs from Durant outside of pure basketball ability, and the difference that makes me think that he is the better player of the two, is something more arbitrary and gray. But the proof is in the results, especially over the past few years. Leadership. Curry rallies the motherfucking troops. That's something you cannot deny. He runs his system, which is his system. His teammates run it and they eat out of it, and it just works, man. And he knows that it works, and everything about the Warriors system, which is just Stephen Curry, it works. Meanwhile, if you look at Kevin Durant's career, he has been surrounded by dysfunction for his entire career. The only time where systematically he was dominant, the only time where the things around him were complicated and created seamless basketball, was in Golden State. The environment that these guys create as franchise players is so different. KD seems cool to just go with the flow, and that's fine and dandy, but it doesn't really result in good leadership and your team being a cohesive unit. Meanwhile, I feel any team where Stephen Curry is at the helm is gonna be a team. And my metric for who I believe to be a better player always comes down to simply, who would I rather build a franchise with? Who do I as a GM think I would have the easiest job winning a championship with? And for me, that answer, prime or now, is Stephen Curry. But before I let you go, I need to talk to you about the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. If you've been around on YouTube long enough, you have probably heard of Squarespace, and that is for good reason. Squarespace is a great way to create your own website, whether you are using it to market your own business, where you can use Squarespace's extensions, which help you manage inventory, products, bookkeeping, and shipping around the globe, or use it to create a community with features including comments, replies, and likes. You can create blogs and categorize, schedule, and share your posts on different social media platforms. Through Squarespace, you can connect with your audience and generate revenue through gated members-only content, manage your members, send email communications, and leverage audience insights, all in one easy-to-use platform. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/rustybuckets to save 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain. Again, that is squarespace.com/rustybuckets to save 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain. Shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and cue the outro music.